I'm Belinda, the General Manager at Eating Disorders Queensland, formerly known as the Eating Issues Centre. As you can recall from our last podcast, we had a discussion with Bray, and she shared a little bit about her story, her lived experience, and also how she created skills or developed skills around connected eating within a community setting. She will talk a little bit about that lived experience, not just in recovery, but also her lived experience as a professional practicing as a dietitian.
Hi, I'm Bray. I am a dietitian in the eating disorder space, and I'm also one of the peer mentors in TEAK's peer mentoring program. So the myth that I want to bust is that there are good and bad foods. There is no such thing. So it is not bad for us to include potato and bread and pasta and rice, or carbs and fats, or whatever way you kind of differentiate foods. There is place for all of these in a healthy diet. And it is one of the myths of diet culture, and it's also one of the myths of our eating disorder, that these foods will cause us harm. Nutrition is kind of the foundation of our recovery and our well-being.
So Megan, this next conversation is a little bit about down the line from recovery. So not everyone watching this podcast would be in the same space as you at, but you mentioned that stigma around being a professional with an eating disorder. How do you advocate within a professional setting and actually help destigmatizing and busting some of those myths? Because I would think from a professional point of view, we would understand the eating disorder concept a bit better, but it seems like, no, that's not the case.
Yeah. So one thing is just by being me, the fact that I show up to work every day and maintain recovery, and that I openly disclose my lived experience to all my colleagues, all my clients, like everyone in my life knows that I have a lived recovery experience.
And is that sometimes filled with a bit of anxiety, like or you getting used to that narrative?
Yeah, it used to be.
Yeah.
But now I just think of it as part of, like, I grew up on the Sunshine Coast. I have a mother and a father. I have a dog. And I have a lived recovery experience.
Okay.
Like, it's definitely started to be something that is just part of my narrative. But initially it was filled with immense anxiety. But what I've come to realize is this is my story, and how someone else receives it is really their issue. And I want to change kind of how those people may receive it if it's negatively. Like, I love people to see that me having had this lived experience in no way kind of means that I cannot do my job or do my job well.
Actually, I can do my job very good with this.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think so.
No, I can vouch for that.
So I think one thing is, just like being open and being honest. And when you can, I spent years not telling anyone, and I think that was really good for me to be able to just be myself and not have had this kind of she has a lived experience label. But I also find that it's not even like that once you kind of communicate it openly. The more honest and open and the more you use it, it just feels like one part of your story, not the whole thing. And I definitely find as you do that, people who've been less receptive to lived experience, the more they get to know you, they kind of go, oh, okay. Maybe, right, okay, I'm meeting all these people who are recovered, and it's breaking some of the things I might have thought.
The stigma.
Absolutely. But I'm often doing presentations to health professionals, and I guess in clinical meetings or whatever it might be, I'll often use the phrase, I'm just going to put my lived experience hat on here for a moment, and then proceed to kind of explore how it might feel for the individual, because you'd think that would be done a lot, but often it's a step is a step that's missed, and I think it's becoming more regular, but it's something that's really powerful coming from someone who's been there.
So the message is that once you're down that road of recovery, starting to disclose and using your lived experience, it's scary, but it can be done, and it gets easier doing it. And it's part of recovery and sort of that scaffolding around recovery.
Yeah, and I think it's really strengthened my own recovery, to be honest, to know that I can disclose this openly, and I have a lot of supports around me. a lapse or a relapse has not been something I've experienced in many, many years now. But I also know that if I was to go through a rough patch, I am surrounded by so many people that can be there in a non-judgmental way.
Support you.
And, you know, like, I think people are afraid of saying that, you know, we've had that experience because what if it happens again? But it's like everyone gets sick in their life. Yeah. Everyone has.
There's no shame in saying I'm not well in the moment.
Absolutely.
I need an extra bit of support.
Definitely.
So just to wrap up a really great conversation, we could carry on for a long time. The question we get a lot is, what does an adequate meal look like? So here we are, not often with somebody, eating with somebody, and we're struggling. What does that adequate meal look like? How do you judge what you need to eat?
Yeah, and that is, I guess that's almost the core work of a dietitian, is dealing with that question day in, day out. And well, I would preface this answer with saying that everyone's requirements in recovery are different.
Yes.
And particularly if someone is needing to weight restore, their requirements will be above and beyond what you would kind of recommend for someone else. But a question I always ask people or get people to reflect on is, would you feel comfortable feeding that to a friend? Or what kind of portion would you give to a friend?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is so often someone runs through what they eat in a day or a meal that they had, and I ask them if that was enough, or that if they think that that's an adequate portion. They say, yeah, that's fine. And I say, okay, well, how would you feel serving that to me for lunch? And they're like, oh gosh, no, I'd definitely add some of this and add some of that. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the difference? So often when we're living with an eating disorder, we have this set of rules that we deem to be applicable for ourselves, that we would never make anyone else that we care about live by those rules. So often just reflecting on how we might treat a friend or a loved one is powerful enough to know that we actually have the inner wisdom to know what an adequate portion is, because often people do. It's just that they doubt themselves in the moment.
And there's fear around it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm hearing you saying if you're new in recovery, it is advisable to get yourself dietetic support.
Yes.
Because the intake, weight restoring is very different from when you are in recovery, and you can judge yourself eating.
Definitely. And I would always recommend people seeing a dietitian that has a specialized interest in eating disorders, because you will get very different care based on the type of dietitian you go to. So always find someone who works in that area. But what would I feed a friend is a really simple, really easy tool to help.
That's great. It's a great one to remember. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. And
absolute pleasure.
We will definitely talk more.
I have no doubt.
So thank you for watching our second podcast with our special guest, Bray. Also a reminder, the festive season's coming up, and we know especially for people impacted by eating disorders, anxieties will surface. So now's the time to prepare for those and practice some self-compassion. Here at EDQ, we've developed another beautiful downloadable resource, downloaded here, with some really great holiday eating tips. So be sure to join us next time, and thank you so much for joining us.